Okay, this one is called Get Unplugged. We all need to get unplugged. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I have provided references to aid you in your research. I don't know everything, and I'm open to ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Wasn't it Jefferson that said that an educated, enlightened citizenry is essential for a free government, and yet they've been spending the last recent decades dumbing people down. Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. It's true. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical pharmaceutical industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical pharmaceutical industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, then I don't trust you. Government is not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Governors like Abbott are issuing their edicts under their military dictatorship, which executive orders, to ensure that their property is safe. Recall Abbott. Abbott needs to lose an election. Executive orders are not law. Executive orders are color of law. Executive orders are equivalent to regulations. Regulations are for government property. Color means an appearance, a semblance, or a smilkrum as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise, or a pretext. Colorable, that which is in appearance only and not in reality what it purports to be, hence counterfeit, feigned, having the appearance of truth. Color of law means the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right. Misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law and made possible only because wrongdoers clothed with authority of the state is action taken under color of law. And there's felonies associated with this, folks. We need to get off our backside and start reminding people about this. Whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any inhabitant of any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the constitutional laws of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. That's Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, violating rights under color of law. Title 18, United States Code, actually that should be District of Columbia Code, but they're calling it United States Code, Section 241, conspiracy to violate rights under the color of law. If 2 or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the constitutional laws of the United States or because of his having so exercised the same, they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. So, if Abbott is telling that the county commissioners to issue an edict, and the county commissioners are telling that business owner to violate your rights under the color of law, that's a conspiracy. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. This is the common law. This is Article 9, an amendment. This brings in common law. All of our common law rights are unlimited. We have unlimited common law rights. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights or privileges to enjoy which no written law or statute is required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. You're not free. You are a slave. If you're dealing with this, you are a slave. You are property. As a general rule, men have the natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself and in no way impairs the rights of others. Under the Lieber Code, a place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation. So we're occupied by an enemy. This is a military dictatorship. It's martial law. This is the Roman cult. Under the martial law, the invading army or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. Martial law does not cease during a hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the commander-in-chief. I have never seen one yet. Or by special mention in a treaty of peace. And I've never seen any. There's treaties of peace, there's no doubt about it, like the Treaty of Hidalgo. But it doesn't say anything about ending the martial law. Why do you think the cops in Arizona wear military uniforms? That's Article 2 of the Lieber Code. Article 10. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes. You wonder why there's complete lack of due process when it comes to the tax collection, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader. So whether they all impose it. So it's taxation is martial law by definition, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. And that's safety. The operative word here is safety. They want to make sure everything's safe. Why do you think they're making you wear this mask or anything else? Are you safe? We hope you're safe today. Be safe. Drive safely. Article 10 of the Lieber Code. Oh, look at that. That's the New World Slave Flag. The New World Slave Flag. You get to wear a New World Slave Flag. You see people wearing the New World Slave Flag all the time. There's 3 kinds of martial law. Full martial law, declaration of martial law is issued, troops are put on the street, used only during wartime, used on a foreign country, or when actually invaded by foreign power or put down an armed rebellion. Martial law proper. Law of the armed forces. When a captain tells a private what to do, it's enforced by court-martial. Martial law rule is the law of necessity and emergency. Why do you think they always come up with this? Oh, we have an emergency. We got the war on terror. Oh, we got the war on this or the war on that or the war on crime. Allows the domestic use of martial law powers used during times of peace. Can continue for centuries during a military occupation. And that is U.S. Supreme Court, Ex parte Milligan. And that's cited in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment, Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. My book is now available. Trump, a true American patriot or not? This is the back of the book. I actually didn't write that. If you look on the front of the book, it says by me and Mike Blackwell. Mike financed the book, and so I put him on it to make sure that no matter what happened to me, he'd make sure and recover his expenses. But I wrote the book. Anyways, so the back of the book was written by the publisher. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. For too long, a small group in the nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government at the cost of its citizens. Washington flourished, but the insiders refused to share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but allowed our jobs to leave and our factories to close. Not anymore. And that part is taken from that top that I just read, is taken from the 2016 inaugural address of Donald Trump. In Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Fern revealed the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposed how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. You can order the book from Amazon.com or from my website. It's $30 plus shipping. If you order the book, I prefer that you order the book from my website, and that's sovereigntyinternational.fyi. It's right on the front page. Amazon.com does not provide autographed books. If you want the book autographed, order the book from my website, but don't forget to let me know what you want the autograph to say. So Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the founders intended, to enslave everybody. Congress gave governments permission to screen for low intelligence for their code enforcers. Congress granted plausible deniability to their order followers so they can rape, pillage, and murder as much as they like and then claim good faith immunity. Congress mandated fluoride in the drinking water to dumb down the people for their concentration camps. Papers, please. That's military dictatorship, folks. Right there. Congress created the Roman cult Sestake Trust as a mechanism to enslave everybody, collateralize their so-called debt, and sell everybody into slavery. Congress mandated everybody register their births to compel everybody into their slave system. Congress created administrative law based on fraudulent fictitious contracts as a mechanism of slavery. You volunteered. Congress created all sorts of prisons to facilitate their military dictatorship and their slavery agenda. Congress gave the president power to make war without congressional approval as a mechanism of slavery all over the planet. Congress mandating their so-called real ID for their slaves to fabricate evidence of their slaves for their bar members' presumptions. Congress has given pharmaceutical companies immunity for their poisonous vaccines. Congress has authorized naked short selling on Wall Street. I would never participate in anything on Wall Street. It's a scam. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. This here is claimed to be Jefferson's seal, and it could be. I've seen other seals of Jefferson had TJ on them. And it's also said that this could be the obverse, or the backside of the seal that Jefferson proposed for the United States. Anyways, I like it. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And that was actually a bit of a motto during the War of Independence. What this depicts is the pillar of fire, the children of Israel on the left, the Egyptian soldiers in the middle, drowning in the Dead Sea, and the pillar of fire holding them back. A society whose citizens refuse to see and investigate the facts, who refuse to believe that their government and their media will routinely lie to them and fabricate a reality contrary to verifiable facts, is a society that chooses and deserves the police state dictatorship it is going to get. And that is true, although this guy is a bit of a, what do they call that? He's New World Order crowd, I think, because if they refuse to believe it, but a lot of people just, they dumb them down with fluoride in the water. They're too stupid to figure it out. Martial law is the public law of necessity. Necessity calls it forth. Necessity justifies exercise, and necessity measures the extent and degree to which it may be employed. That necessity is no formal, artificial, legalistic concept, but an actual and factual one. It is necessity of taking action to safeguard the state against insurrection, riot, disorder, or public calamity. What constitutes necessity is a question of fact in each case. And that's Frederick B. Weiner, A Practical Manual of Martial Law, 1940, and that's cited in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, at page 3093. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Well said, William Pitt. And that was in a speech in the House of Commons, November 18th, 1873. So remember, that's martial law rule, and it's the law of necessity and emergency. The action of Congress in the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of the government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. Okay, so that's emergency. Emergency or necessity, folks. Juilliard versus Greenman, U.S. Supreme Court. Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, emergency and necessity, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, etc., etc., etc. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. The 14th Amendment is an extension of national military powers presently used in a military character, enforced by military municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations, and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. Gee, that sounds like a military dictatorship. And that's, again, taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. This is taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775. Statutes have been passed extending courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits, for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, and instead thereof the published nor the use and exercise of the law martial. So martial law gets rid of common law. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. So think about it. Martial law is international law. Common law is not international law. And so Republican form of government is common law, and Article 4, Section 4 says we're entitled to a Republican form of government. So the first thing they want to do is, and this is even said in the title of this document, causes and necessity for taking up arms. Okay, so the Founding Fathers says, well, we're under necessity too. We need to take up arms and defend ourselves. And so it's all about martial law. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. That's from Benjamin Franklin. There's more than one of the Founding Fathers. It was a bit of a motto back then. Should be again. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We need to make it a motto. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. And so think about it. Revolution was all about money. And there's going to be more stuff I'm going to present that'll prove that fact. Resistance is victory. Only 3% of the colonists actually fought and won the American Revolutionary War. They were people like you and me that said no. If they came to these understandings and acted rightly upon them, so can we. Freedom is the highest spiritual truth. Fighting to defend it mentally and physically is our natural inherent human right. Resistance to the evil of human slavery is not futile. It is the path to spiritual enlightenment with the very law of creation itself. Freedom is not a gift bestowed upon us by other men, but a right that belongs to us by the laws of God and nature. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. That's actually one of Jefferson's quotes. So maybe that was another seal that was associated with Jefferson. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. So that means common law And that doesn't include military dictatorship. So the despotism or republic, which one is it? Article 4, Section 4, Constitution of the United States of America. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive, practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. And that's Dred Scott versus Sanford, U.S. Supreme Court. And so a republic is not international law. Law of nations and international law are convertible phrases. A purpose of a republican form of government is to shield we the people from international law. It's common law. It can be only common law. It's either common law, it's either a republic, or it's martial law. It's international law. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. And that's Downs versus Bidwell, U.S. Supreme Court. And look here, in Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation, it says the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And yet, when you get a passport, it just says United States of America. Two separate entities, at least two. There's probably more. Passport defined. A passport is a written document given to a person or persons by a commander of belligerent forces authorizing him or them to travel unmolested within the district occupied by his troops. It's a military dictatorship. It's a military document. Passports are issued by the State Department or similar office in other countries to diplomatic agents and others entering or traveling in foreign countries, which are the same general character as those issued by war, during war. The latter should, when practicable, have a photograph of the bearer attached, and that's in the Rules of Land Warfare, 1914 edition, Passport Safe Conduct, Safeguards, and Cartels. Chapter 7, Section 4, Article 276, page 100. And there is the Federal Reserve note. Actually, that isn't a Federal Reserve note. That's a silver certificate. Doesn't say anywhere on there Federal Reserve note. I like that, but it's still a negotiable instrument. It's a banknote. It's a treasury note. Anyways, it says the United States of America, front and back. It's not just United States of America. It is the United States of America. At common law, only gold and silver were legal tender. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. This is a McLaren and Nesbitt. This is a cite from 1820, but they are citing Book 2 of the Institutes on the Laws of England, which is Coke, and it goes back to the 1500s. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. Discharge falls under the law of nations, which is international law. So when you use their Federal Reserve notes, you're operating in international law. Governments descend to the level of mere private corporations and take on the characteristics of mere private citizen where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. And that's Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 1942. Governments lose their immunity and descend to the level of private corporations when involved in commercial activity enforcing negotiable instruments, as in fines, penalties, assessments, bails, taxes, and the remedy lies in the hand of the state and its municipalities seeking a remedy. So any of that stuff is all commercial. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337, As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. So United States notes are meant for internal use of the government only. Of course, they sit there and do this wordsmithing because they don't want to. They're engaged in treason, is what they're engaged in, and so they want to, when push comes to shove, they want to be able to say that you volunteered. That's exactly it, folks. You volunteered. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. That's Juilliard versus Greenman, U.S. Supreme Court. So national supremacy. Okay, so the federal government, when you're using the legal tender notes, Federal Reserve notes, then the federal government is supreme, and you're under international law, and so there's no such thing as sovereign, okay, because you're taking advantage of a privilege. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories, promissory notes and IOUs. A requirement for a promissory note is a promise to pay. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes, but you cannot pay a debt with the Federal Reserve note, or even a gold or silver certificate can't pay a debt. Quite frankly, it's got to be lawful money, coin. Gold or silver certificates still would not pay a debt. They would discharge it with limited liability. Bankster Thieves, check out my other videos. Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 7, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail 1 and 2, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through 19, the Canada Border Pigs playlist, bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. So, under Article 37 of the Libra Code, see, we're going back to this martial law again. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans. Okay, so the Supreme Court called them forced loans, and here in the Libra Code they're calling them forced loans. Okay, so legal tender is a forced loan. This commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes are forced loans. You're forced to loan the government money. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Because of the fact that it's not created by the government or any bankster organization. It's created by miners, and anybody can be a miner, so it's not a forced loan. Anything can be used as a medium of exchange as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. And, I haven't been on Facebook for months, and I'm not interested in going there. I mean, as a matter of fact, I have seriously thought about, I wouldn't delete my profile until I deleted those groups, and I can't delete those groups until I ban everybody off of the groups. And so there's my dilemma. Because I don't want Facebook to benefit from my hard work. So I can't delete my profile. So I'm there, and that's it. I don't go there. Yahoo private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. And the next one is a library invite. That's where I'm moving everything to. Eventually, I want to delete this YouTube profile and my Google email addresses. I notice I don't provide any. The addresses I give you are on Yahoo and Hotmail, and I've actually got a it's one of those secure ones over in Switzerland. Oh man, I can't even think of the name right now. But anyways, I got one. So my Patreon is Sovereignty International, and I have a group on MeWe which is kind of like Facebook. Congress converted citizenship into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended for the purpose of enslaving everybody. And this is U.S. Supreme Court again, Colgate versus Harvey. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. So what they're essentially saying is, prior to the 14th Amendment, well, first of all, there's always been two classes of citizens. I mean, you go back to the Bible, it talks about them, those born in the land and the strangers. And there's Supreme Court cases that talk about born in the land and strangers. And so there's always been, and in the Constitution, it talks about, in Article 4 of the Constitution, it talks about citizens of the United States. It's confusing how they talk about it, but it's in the original 13th Amendment. It talks about it under them and either of them. Okay, so that's under them is the federal government, and either of them is the state government. Anyways, it's similar terminology in Article 4. The privilege and immunities of citizens of the United States shall be available to citizens in the states. Something like that. I can't remember the exact text. I don't have it here. But anyways, the point is that they turned it upside down. Prior to the 14th Amendment, you had to be a state citizen to be a U.S. citizen. After the 14th Amendment, you could be a U.S. citizen without being a state. So it was paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. The term resident and citizen, United States, is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. That's U.S. citizen, created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. And that's a summary from Henry Boland's. Right. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions. They dumb them down in their so-called schools these days. They don't educate you; they dumb you down. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Well said. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in a catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally, that's military dictatorship, folks, covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. So, I mean, if you think about it, in that case that we talked about earlier, that said that the legal tender notes resulted in national supremacy, right? Well, that's what this is saying too. Okay, so for U.S. citizens, the federal government's supreme. An act to establish a code of law. Let's go back there and see if we can find it. Right here. Juilliard versus Greenman. Forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. So, again, That's what this is talking about here, where the federal government is supreme. An act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, the legal state to be the Sestic Eius. Okay, so that's what they do. Is it's all coming from the Roman cult. This is located at 31 Stat 1432 and 31 Stat 1189. So this is all part of the DC Code, and now they call this United States Code, by the way. March 3rd, 1901, be it further enacted in interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely that the word person shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations. Absence of 7 years at 31 Stat 1230, and so this is right up at the front, 1189 and 1230, so that means it's like a couple hundred pages. 150 pages. Because this part right here is up in the beginning. This is right at 2, so this is like on the first page probably. And this is presumption of death, okay? So it's at least that long, it's probably longer. 31 Stat 1230, presumption of death. They presume you're dead. And this is all coming from the Roman cult, folks. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs, to the use of the religious houses. That's the Roman cult, folks. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks, and they're courts of equity. They're all courts of equity these days, and they're all under the Roman cult. To be bound in, why do you think they wear that black robe? That's a military uniform. It's international law. To be bound in conscience to account to a Sestic Eius for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. Still the foundation. And this is where it's codified. Title 15, United States Code, Section 44, definitions. A corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit, or that of its members, and has shares of capital stock, or certificates of interest. So this first clause, so that's all of this down to here, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then the rest of it basically is the same definition, except it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. That would be the Sestic Trust. In the second part of that definition would include a Sestic Trust. And the first part of that definition would include the trusts that I help people set up. Anyways, so this is Article 4, Section 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. So, if you are subject to regulations, you are property of the government. If you are subject to the regulations, then you are property of the government. So, I had Walmart say to me that, matter of fact, the cop, what happened is I went in, I do this all the time. I went into Walmart, and there's signs all over saying you got to wear a mask, and everybody's got masks on. I walk in without a mask. And sometimes I'll go past the receptionist there. They have someone at the front, and they'll hand me a mask, and I'll take it and I'll put it in my pocket. And I'll just go on, and I'll go and find what I'm looking for, and then I'll be at the checkout stand. Anyways, and this time I was at the checkout stand. They had a cop that was at this Walmart, and they never had a cop again after that too. And I think it's because they didn't want to get mixed up in a felony. But anyway, so they had a cop there. I was at the checkout stand. One of the managers brings this cop over to confront me about not wearing a mask. And I said to the cop, I said, you know that's a felony. I said, you know that Abbott's executive orders are edicts under martial law, and they're color of law. They're by definition color of law. And under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, it's a felony to violate my rights under color of law. And then I looked at the manager and I said, are you the one that put him up to this? And he's sitting there shaking his head, no, not me, no, not me. And so then the cop says, well, he says they have a right to do business with whoever they want to do business. And I said, well, and I that's about the time I pulled the mask out and kind of half put it on. I never put it on properly, but and that's but what I should have said is this Walmart is property of the United States under Article 4, Section 2. And so therefore you can't say that they can turn me away because they're not private. They have a corporate status and they're not private. And they're subject to regulations. That means they're property of the federal government under Article 4, Section 2. Anyways, that's what I should have done, but I didn't. But I was, I didn't want to, the cop was very nice and I didn't want to push it too much. But after that, they used to have a cop at that store all the time. And after that, they never had a cop. And I think what happened was that cop went back and talked to his chief, and his chief says, you better not go back there anymore. Because what happens is it mixes him up in the felony. And so once they can claim good faith. And we're going to talk about this in this video. They can claim good faith. But until you tell them, once you tell them, then all of a sudden everything changes. And they don't have good faith anymore, and they're personally liable and for felonies. And so they can claim good faith. Anyways, let's keep going. Oh, there it is, right here. Good faith. Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 3823, evidence not to be used. And this first paragraph A sounds so good. Doesn't it sound really good? If we had real good government, that's all it would be there. Anyways, no evidence obtained by an officer or other person in violation of any provisions of the constitutional laws of the state of Texas or in the constitutional laws of the United States of America shall be admitted in evidence against the accused in the trial of any criminal case. That sounds so good, doesn't it? And then you read paragraph B. It is an exception to the provisions of subsection A of this article that the evidence was obtained by a law enforcement officer acting in objective good faith reliance upon a warrant issued by a neutral magistrate based on probable cause. Well, first of all, they're not neutral. There is no probable cause. Don't get me going. Anyways, it's stuff like this that's in their codes that allows them to have good faith, and it's even in the federal. Okay, this is Title 18 of the U.S. Code 2707, which is really District of Columbia Code. Civil action. Defense, a good faith reliance on a court warrant or order, a grand jury subpoena, a legislative authorization, or a statutory authorization, including a request of a governmental entity under Section 2703F of this title, a request of an investigative or law enforcement officer under Section 2518.7 of this title, or a good faith determination to Section 2511.3 of this title permitted the conduct complained of, is a complete defense to any civil or criminal action brought under this chapter or any other law. So that's why bar has been taking forever to bring indictments against these deep state actors, because as long as they can claim good faith, they got to build a case against them, and because of this kind of crap. Anyways, so you got to build a case is what you have to do, and it's a good idea to have witnesses and the whole 9 yards if you want to go after them. But actually, I found that just bringing up the issue and being prepared to walk out of there, okay? Like I've gone into restaurants, and they would, like I went into, it's called Costa Vida. It's actually a good Mexican, burritos. It's a pretty good restaurant. Anyways, I walked in there and I got into, I said, it's a felony. And they said, huh? And I said, yeah. I said, under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, Abbott's edicts under martial law are color of law, and under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, it's a felony to violate somebody's rights under the color of law. And so what you're doing right now is a felony. And he said, well, I'm just doing what I'm told. And I said, that sounds interesting, but would you commit murder? Because that's a felony too. if somebody told you to do it. And he says, and so they wouldn't back down. And so I basically I had a mask on, and I kind of half put it on again, and I was standing there waiting to order, and the guy comes up and wants me to do my order, and I said, I said I'm not hungry, and I left, and so then I went back to that same restaurant like about a month later, and with no mask. Everybody else had masks on. Nobody said anything. So, it's an educational process. A lot of times these guys are just, they're idiots, and they're just doing what they're told. And a lot of times I think, well, I won't say a lot of times, but I'll bet you that some of the times they don't like doing it. They're just doing what they're told, and they're just waiting for someone to object, and once you do, then no problem. Because I've had that happen too. Is once I explain it to them, they'll just forget about it. They'll just, I've had that happen. Anyways, banks are international law. Military despotism is international law. Uniform Commercial Code is international law. All codes, rules, regulations are international law. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military despotism. It makes it so the courts presume you do not pay a debt. It basically turns the courts into like a commercial transaction. It makes everybody into paupers. Paupers have no rights except what they allow you to have. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. Debt is the money of slaves. And that's what a Federal Reserve note is a debt instrument. Federal Reserve was set up under the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. The single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes, it's not bank notes, it's not forced loans, it's not discharged debts, it's not international law. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. Who is your God? I consider myself a Christian. And we're all going to have to choose. It's getting to the point the New World Order is moving ahead, and we're all going to have to choose. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already clicked because it's normally red. The bell is not clicked. The arrow's pointing at the bell. And what happens is a little pop-up menu comes up where you select which notifications you want to be notified about. What is proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. And that's Attorney General's opinion, February 3rd, 1857. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They would be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment create exceptions to its application. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in this state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that's U.S. Supreme Court in the United States versus United Mine Workers. Under a military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates democracy. Under military dictatorship, you have a democracy. It's mob rule. It's whoever votes to get the things passed, right? Democracy is international law. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. Website has 2 subscription levels, and I accept cryptocurrencies. My basic subscription level for my website is $29.99 a year for the videos only, and $49.99 a year for videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I meant an attorney. No, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. So if you want to buy a subscription as a donation, it's a modest donation, there's no doubt about it, but a whole bunch of people chipping in a little bit adds up pretty fast, and it's all appreciated. Some of the videos I've got are Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Toll Roads Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation of Signature Training, Third Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal Complaint Training, Lawsuit Training. There's one video on the lawsuit. There's about 3 videos on the criminal complaints. And then other training depending on what it is and whether it's something that I want to do. I've also got Northeast Private Information Share videos. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and my website, and all exclusive content will be available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. And there's a Patreon channel. Now, one of the things I want to bring to your attention is this unlimited consultations. There's limits, okay? Because, first of all, I'm not into babysitting. I expect people to do some homework, and getting 15 emails together, like questions like, should I sign this affidavit under prejudice or something? I've got all that stuff is in my videos. So again, I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. But I've got the videos up there. They're all free, and except the exclusive ones, of course. But all the important ones, the stuff that you need to know, are free. And and that's why I put the training videos up there in these exclusive channels, because then you can see how to fill out the forms and everything. But so I'll be happy to tell you, what I would do under certain circumstances. But again, as far as babysitting is concerned, you need to watch my videos, and that's what I'll tell you. You need to watch my videos. And I'm really not into getting 15 emails a day from the same guy wanting me to hold his hand through everything. So, anyways, they've been telling people for decades we're in a democracy. Do you think that's an accident? I am sick of YouTube and Google censorship over the next few months, I should say. I'll be moving away from YouTube and Google. I've already dumped Chrome for Brave. I'm moving my videos over to Library. There's a invitation link for Library right there, and there's one below this video as well. So all my recent videos have one of those links. So you'll be able to, what I would suggest is eventually I'm going to delete this YouTube channel, and YouTube can take a long walk off a short pier. Anyways, this is my book again. It's available now. The important thing I'm going to read here is, because I already read this once, does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. Okay, so I would recommend that you order the book. It's got a lot of citations and things like that in it. A lot of treaty citations from treaties, and law dictionary definitions, all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of that stuff. I don't really say that much on my own. I let the courts and the treaties and all of that stuff say it by itself. And so it's available on Amazon and on my website. Amazon does not provide autographed books. I do provide autographed books from my website. My website goes to PayPal, and if you want to pay by another method, contact me privately. My email address is Engineer Wynn, and my website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And 2 years after the Declaration of Independence, remember we were talking about how the War of Independence was fought over taxes. Well, Get a load of this. This is George III, Chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman. That from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable in any of his colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. So it's theft, okay? And what they did is they used this wanting to raise money for taxes, an excuse to impose a military dictatorship, right? Emergency and necessity, impose a military dictatorship, and they revolted, and you can't blame them. I'm glad they did. I wish that we had a little bit of backbone nowadays and people were so damn dumbed down and can't figure out what's going on. Taxes caused the War of Independence, so if they can tax you, then you are their slave. Taxes are tribute. You are forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. If a subject is a slave, taxation is forced to work for nothing. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced as self-evident. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. It's obvious that everything that the government creates is taxable, and if it doesn't create it, it's not taxable. Remember, render unto God the things that are God, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. A tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject. An excise, tallage. In public law, taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation have been said to be: 1, that the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities, that is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. Revenue, okay? That is corporate profits. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists what is called equality or inequality of taxation. And that's Dictionary of English Law, Sweeten Maxwell, London, 1959. There's 2 ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. It is the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature or otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Ministerial clerks are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Say. Now, this is a federal court case quoting Bradley versus Fisher, which is the U.S. Supreme Court, and that case is quoting Marshal Say, which is 10 Coke 68, which is Coke in the 1500s. This is as old as time itself. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. The prosecutor is the enemy, and so I would be filing bar complaints against that SOB. Everything they do is a fraud and a nullity. Judge works with the state, prosecutor works with the state, police or witness works with the state, The vast majority of disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, it doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. This is all international law, folks. It's a military dictatorship. But in fact and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in the state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that's United States versus United Mine Workers, 1947. And this is the current so-called 13th Amendment, Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So they put on a show trial and they sell you into slavery. And he, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law in its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. And that's 62 Virginia 790, 1871. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren or the children of Israel, or maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. This is all satanic. And we have a duty as Christians to put this evil away from among us. And we have not done that. And that's why we're reaping these plagues and pestilences. And it's only going to get worse until we repent. So repent. We need to, not only us, I mean, a lot of the people that are watching this video are not going to have that problem. And so, but they need to encourage other people to repent. Spread the word. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state, to the contrary notwithstanding. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities. It is very particular and very horrible. Their restoration is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits, that there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell. It is the Society of Loyola. And that's John Adams, second President of the United States. Within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's Roman Catholic Archbishop James E. Quigley, Chicago Daily Tribune, May 5th, 1903. Roman conquest, 24th of September, 2015. The pimp came and spoke to Congress. The Pope. No, the pimp. And this text right here is really hard to read. So I've got it over here. So let's go to right here. This text right here is right here. Roman Achaea military staff carried in battle by all Roman commands, planted on all conquered nations. That's this right here, pointing at this staff right here. And then this is pointing at Biden, because this was 2015 and Biden was vice president. If he's vice president, that means he's president of the Senate. So this is a joint session of Congress. Devout Roman Catholic, honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton University. That's Biden. And this is pointing at these right here. Roman bundle of rods bound to a weapon, symbolizing subservient under the rule of a single man. And this, well, it's this one here now, is pointing at Boehner, who was the Speaker of the House. Boehner, or Boner, or whatever his name is. Anyways, he's out of there now, but this is pointing at the Speaker of the House. Devout Roman Catholic, trained by Jesuits, installed first Jesuit chaplain to the House. Now, this is a better picture because there's nobody there. It's closer in, and you can see all this stuff a lot better. And this is this military staff that's planted on all conquered nations. This is the fascists, okay? And so this is evidence. This is the Roman cult owns and operates Congress. Congress is owned and operated by the Roman cult. On behalf of the Roman cult, Congress has been imposing a military dictatorship on everybody in America. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Congress has sold themselves to the Roman cult. Congress has breached the trust. Technically, all these laws don't apply to any living man or woman, but it's amazing how they go and criminally convert you and assault you, and they know exactly what they're doing. So they breached the trust. They're engaged in treason. Congress is owned and operated by the Roman cult. On behalf of the Roman cult, Congress has been imposing a military dictatorship on everybody in America. Technically, their military dictatorship is only on corporations, but the Roman cult has used their sesticate trust scam to impose it on everybody. Congress has given war powers to the president, which is why there's always another war and another emergency. Georgetown University is a Jesuit university. We can have a benevolent dictator or a tyrant dictator. Obama was a textbook tyrant. Pelosi gets up and tells the House we can't read this bill until after we approve it. Trump is in a viper's pit. When Trump got elected, Lindsey Williams is a preacher who was the Alaska Pipeline in the 60s when they were building the Alaska Pipeline, and he got to know the elite, and some of them, and they liked him, and they went and invited him to their meetings, and so he's been staying in touch with some of them over the last 40 years. Anyways, what they told him when Trump got elected is they said that God intervened and their plans were on hold until Trump was out of office. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. Well said, Abraham Lincoln. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. There's Obama with the pimp, and see, they're all laughing and chuckling. Obama was a textbook tyrant, and so they were just going to go ahead and do whatever they wanted to do. And then there's Trump with the pimp, and the pimp doesn't look too happy. I think it's because justice is coming and he knows it. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. That's why we're seeing this slander and that's going on against Trump all these days, because they lost the debate, and they can't defeat him with logic or anything else. So they just smear him. They just lie. And this is Socrates said that. When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. So rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We have governor tyrants, we have Congress tyrants, we have county commissioner tyrants, we have city tyrants, and county sheriffs. Some of them have said that we're not enforcing these edicts, and but some of them are. So those ones are tyrants. And we also have judicial tyrants, lots of judicial tyrants. So we need to get unplugged. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We need to get unplugged. All executive orders are regulation for property of the government, and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It is a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they can claim good faith. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses. So that's what you need to do, is stand up to them, tell them it's a felony. You can be nice to them. America needs God. So rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Exodus 20:3, thou shalt have no other gods before me. The New World Order will require you to worship government. That's what's going to happen. That's what everybody is saying, is that what their plans are. Celeste Solum, who is a former commander of Homeland Security under FEMA, and she's got a YouTube video, and she says, and she's pretty credible, I tell you. She says that's what their plan is basically you're going to have to renounce God, and government's going to be your God. They don't need a lot of people around because they got robots and they can do everything themselves, or with the robots. And so They want to reduce the population by about 80 to 90%. And so they'll just guillotine you, is what she says they're going to do. That is going on in China right now with the Falun Gong. They're doing their organ harvesting programs of the Falun Gong. The Falun Gong are a Buddhist, right here, emerged during the end of China's Qigong boom, a period when it saw proliferation of similar practices of meditation, slowly moving energy exercises, and regulated breathing. Falun Gong combines meditation and Qigong exercises with the moral philosophy. The practice emphasizes morality and the cultivation of virtue and identifies as a practice of the Buddhist school. So they're Buddhists, basically. Though its teaching also incorporates elements drawn by Taoist traditions. Through moral rectitude and the practice of meditation, practitioners of Falun Gong aspire to eliminate attachments and ultimately to achieve spiritual enlightenment. They're about as harmless as they could be. The practice initially enjoyed support from Chinese officialdom, but by the late 1990s, the government of China increasingly viewed Falun Gong as a potential threat to its size, independence from the state, and spiritual teachings. By 1999, government estimates placed the number of Falun Gong practitioners at 70 million. Well, that's a few. During that time, negative coverage of Falun Gong began to appear in the state-run press, and practitioners usually responded by picketing the source involved. Most of the time, the practitioners succeeded, but controversy and tension continued to build. The scale of protest grew until April 1999, when over 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners gathered near the central government compound in Beijing to request legal recognition and freedom from state interference. This demonstration is widely seen as catalyzing the persecution that followed. So, anyways, under the New World Order, you renounce any other god except government, or they'll try to kill you. In China, they're persecuting Christians, Falun Gong, and anybody that fails to worship the government. It is well known they're harvesting organs of the Falun Gong. So America needs God. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Most of the businesses you're dealing with are just as victimized by this coronavirus hoax as you are. Most of them are worried about violence by tyrant bureaucrats. Most of them are people like you and me. I use it as a teaching opportunity. I tell them it's a felony, explain why. If they want to call the cops, I tell them, go ahead, and I'll have them arrest you. Sometimes I just leave. One thing I do is I tell them, look, now that I told you, if some bureaucrat comes up and gives you a hard time, you've taken away their good faith, and so you tell them that I told you, and that'll get you off the hook. Sometimes I just leave, and they lost a customer. 99% of the time when I come back in a week or two and they say nothing, and I go ahead with no mask. And it's amazing how many times we're seeing people with no masks these days. Anyways, so it's got to start somewhere. We got to put a stop to this. I'm going to send some nasty grams, and I'll do another YouTube video about my nasty grams. So we got to get unplugged, folks. It's time to get unplugged. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.